everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Fallon Wagner, and I'm a Digital Content Senior Manager at ATB Financial. I will be introducing our presenter today and moderating the question and answer portion. If you are having any trouble with your connection, you can try refreshing your browser. We will be recording our presentation today, and we'll send out a link for that along with a copy of the slides over the next couple of days to everyone who registered for today's session. The presentation itself should last approximately 50 minutes, and we'll have around 10 minutes for Q&A thereafter. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll do our best to grab as many as we can in the time available. And just a reminder that the chat is public, so we ask that you be respectful of other attendees. We're here today to chat with you about business email compromise, or BEC. BEC is a sophisticated scam that targets businesses that are frequently making wire transfers and have suppliers abroad. The attacker impersonates a company executive or a trusted vendor. The goal is to trick an employee into transferring money or sensitive data to the attacker's account. Presenting today is Aisha Kitchlew, Senior Manager, Fraud and Cybercrime at ATB. Aisha's team supports clients by consulting on best processes and practices to protect your business from cyber attacks. As our presentation proceeds, we would encourage you to put any questions you have into the chat function. Given that we only have an hour, we'll try our best to get to as many of the questions as possible. And with that, let's get started. Over to you, Aisha.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Aisha Kitchlew, and I'm here to talk about one of the most financially devastating cyber threats facing Alberta businesses today, which is business email compromise, or BEC. So this presentation is designed specifically for small to medium-sized businesses right here in Alberta, because as we will see, these sectors are a primary target. But that's not to say that if you are a business that falls under any other category, that you are not at risk. So today we will cover business email compromise from A to Z. We'll start by defining what it is and looking at some sobering stats from right here in Canada. And then we'll dive into the real world scenarios that the scammers use. And most importantly, we'll equip you with the tools to spot the red flags and to protect your businesses. Finally, we'll discuss the critical role of cyber insurance as your last line of defense, and we'll leave plenty of time at the end for your questions, as well as resources that can really come in handy being business owners in Alberta. So let's start off with, what is a business email compromise? In its simplest form, it's a sophisticated scam where a fraudster will impersonate a trusted individual like your CEO, your CFO, a manager, or a long-standing vendor. And their goal, like Fallon mentioned, is to trick you or one of your employees into doing one thing, which is to send money or sensitive data to a fraudulent account or a fraudulent recipient. So business email compromise is a form of social engineering, which means it doesn't rely on technical hacking. So you don't get a virus, you don't get a ransomware attack. Instead, the fraudsters will prey on human trust, create a sense of urgency, and prey on that desire to be a good employee or to keep a good relationship with a vendor. Fraudsters are masters of deception, and the emails that they send are often flawless, especially now with artificial intelligence or AI coming into play. These fraudsters can create the most legitimate looking invoices. They can mirror the language and the tone of the individual or the party that they want to impersonate and just make it super seamless. Business email compromise is not a distant or abstract problem. It's happening here every day, and it's costing Canadian businesses millions of dollars every year. Between April 2022 and April 2023, Microsoft Threat Intelligence detected and investigated 35 million business email compromise attempts globally, averaging to about 156,000 attempts per day. So the frequency of these attacks has really skyrocketed, and you will understand why fraudsters are keen to use this method as I go through this presentation. But what's even more alarming is that the average loss in a single business email compromise case can exceed $100,000. And while large companies get all the headlines in the media, it's really the small to medium-sized businesses that are often targeted. And why is that? It's because these businesses are perceived as having fewer security protocols, smaller teams, making it easier to exploit. In 2023, a KPMG survey in Alberta found that over half of small and medium-sized businesses in the province have been targeted by a cyber attack in the past year. And business email compromise is a core part of this threat landscape. So moving on to how does it work? How does a business email compromise work? Most often, a business email compromise attack will start off with a compromised email address or a spoofed email address for the fraudster to use in order to pretend that they are somebody that you should trust. And because you trust them, it's easy for the fraud actor to convince you to give things up like financial authorization, which might include asking you to make transfers to accounts that belong to the wrong person. So the first part is when the fraud actor will decide who they want to impersonate. So for example, if they want to impersonate an executive within your organization, that executive could be targeted with a simple phishing attack. And suddenly the fraud actor now has access to the email inbox of this executive and other useful business information to use in the attack. So the fraudsters will do a lot of research in this step. This is the step that takes the most time, but they'll take their time and they'll understand how your organization works, who the right people are, so that they know who to contact, who to send their request to, and who can do the things that they want them to do for them. They'll browse all of the data online, including company web pages, LinkedIn, social media accounts, to find out exactly what they need in order to perfectly craft this fraudulent request. Now, if a fraud actor cannot gain access to that email account of the person that they're looking to impersonate, they will spoof that email address instead. So basically what they do is they create an email address that matches very closely with the individuals that they want to impersonate. But what they will do is they will substitute characters to make it look like it's coming from that account. So for example, the legitimate email address could be bob@gmail.com, but the fraud actor will use bob with a 0 at gmail.com. So b0b@gmail.com, which may be easily overlooked by the recipient. When the fraud actor has that email address now to send that request from, in the second step, the fraud actor will use social engineering in order to get that victim to complete an action on their behalf. And they'll do this by convincing the individual. Sometimes the email will be marked as urgent or confidential so that the victim can see, for example, an email coming from their executive, it's marked urgent, and they will action it without thinking twice. Once that trust has been established, so the recipient has received the email and they trust that the person that is sending that email is who should be sending it, step number 3 and 4 will happen. So the scammer will make the request for funds and the recipient or the victim thinks they're talking to the right person. They will send the funds to a new account number, or they will disclose information that the sender is requesting. And keep in mind that this will not raise any red flags right away because the sender is likely believing that this is a legitimate transaction. And it's usually when the person or the party that was actually supposed to receive those funds reaches out and says, why haven't you made a payment? We haven't received a payment for this invoice, is really when the victim goes, hang on a minute, we did send this payment. And then they have to backtrack and realize that they sent it to a different account number instead. So some common business email compromise scenarios, let's get into the mind of the attacker. So how do they do it? Typically, they use a few very well-tested and common scenarios. And the first one I have on my list is CEO fraud. So this is a classic. And this is when the attacker either spoofs the CEO's email address or again gains access to it. And then they send an urgent email to someone within the same organization, most probably someone in the finance department. And it usually happens when the CEO is traveling or away from the office. And the message will say something like, I need you to process an urgent wire transfer for a confidential acquisition. Please, do this immediately and do not disclose this to anybody within the office. So that urgency, again, is that piece of social engineering that's designed to make that employee or that recipient want to action that request immediately, especially because it's coming from the CEO. They're away from the office. They don't have access to their accounts. They need me to do this for them. And that individual will most likely be more comfortable skipping the normal approval process just because of the nature of that request. And then we have invoice fraud. This is an especially common one for businesses with regular vendors. And this is something that we see the most happening as a financial institution with our business clients as well. So in this case, the fraud actor will compromise a vendor's email, finds an active email chain, and then inserts a fraudulent invoice. And that new invoice looks identical to the original one, but the banking information has been changed to the fraudster's account number. So a real life example I have for this type of scenario is that we had a dental clinic, a client that was a dental clinic, which fell victim to a scam of this sort. And this clinic had a long time supplier for things like toothpaste, toothbrushes, and all of the fun things that you get when you visit your dentist. The supplier's email account was hacked or compromised, and the dental clinic, which was our client, received an email from that compromised account posing to be from the accounts receivable department of that toothbrush supplier, saying that the next shipment would not be delivered if the invoice was not paid. So without thinking twice, the team member or the staff member at the dental clinic fulfilled that invoice and sent the funds to that new account number. And it wasn't until months later when the actual supplier or the actual vendor reached out and asked about outstanding invoices. And that's when our client realized that they had fallen victim. And again, this is happening day in and day out because, as you can see, the fraudsters don't really need anything but an email address and the recipient's trust in order to execute this type of fraud. And then finally, we have data theft. So this is less about money and more about sensitive information. And this is when an attacker might impersonate an HR manager or CEO, and they'll email an employee within the same organization to request a list of, say, for example, employee tax documents like T4s. And they'll say, it's for an audit and we need it immediately. This is an urgent request. But in real, this data is used for tax fraud or identity theft. So spotting the red flags of a business email compromise, how do we fight back? Number one is by teaching our teams to be vigilant, but there are some key red flags to look for. So number one, you want to look for urgent or unusual requests. So does this email or request demand immediate action? Does it bypass the company's normal financial procedures? This is a major warning sign. Second, you want to pay close attention to changes in payment details. So if a vendor suddenly changes their bank account information, please do not take that email at face value. And we'll talk about, how to defend your businesses or organizations in the event that you do spot some of these red flags. But third, you always want to check the sender's email address. So again, for those spoofed email addresses, it might be off by just one letter or symbol. So another example is, the domain may be Aisha@company.co instead of Aisha@company.com. So this is a very classic trick. And again, it's used when fraudsters are not able to gain access to the actual email account of the individual that they want to impersonate. Fourth, you want to notice the language and the tone. So does the email feel generic? Does it lack specific details that you'd expect from your colleague that's supposedly sending that request? Now, again, this piece here is becoming less and less obvious because of the use of artificial intelligence, but there are many other red flags that we can look out for. And finally, just be wary of embedded links. So as always, with our phishing education comes hovering your mouse over a link within the email to see the actual destination before you click on that link. So for example, if you're receiving an email from QuickBooks and there's a URL in that email, when you hover over that URL and you see that address or that URL pop up, and it's something different from QuickBooks.com, or it's something completely off, please don't click the link. Instead, what you want to do is you want to go to the main and the legitimate QuickBooks website and sign in from there. So don't click on any links within any emails that you're not expecting. So business email compromise best practices for prevention. So knowing the red flags, again, is the first step, but the second is to put a strong defense in place. So first and foremost, we want to verify everything. This is your number one defense. If you get an urgent request for a wire transfer or a change in banking details, pick up the phone. Call the person or the vendor on a number that you know to be legitimate. Do not use the phone number in the email. So you can look up the company website. You can use a phone number that you've used in the past to speak to somebody at that organization. But again, do not use that phone number or the email address that's within the body of the email. Just a quick phone call can save you tens of thousands of dollars. So implement this as a crucial step by documenting it within your organization's processes and policies. If you already have an incident response plan and a cybersecurity policy, I would encourage that you review it to make sure you've included this step. There's also a template on the resources slide that will be shared with the attendees of this webinar, and it's created by the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, and it really helps organizations review and build cybersecurity response plans and just policies that are related to cybersecurity overall. I also went into a little bit more detail on incident response planning in a fraud webinar that we did in March for Fraud Prevention Month, which will also be included in the resources. But in that session, I do go through the critical components that should be included in these types of response plans and all of your cybersecurity protocols or policies. Second, you want to implement two-factor authentication or 2FA on all of your businesses' emails and financial accounts. 2FA adds an extra layer of security, making it harder for a fraud actor to gain access, even if they have your correct password. Two-factor authentication will send you a code to your phone or device that you have to enter into the website that you're trying to log into. Now, if you give away the code to someone else, they can gain access to your account. So although we do have that extra layer of security, it is not fraud proof. You do need to protect that code. Something that we've been hearing a lot about is clients are receiving phone calls from someone claiming that they are from the financial institution that the client is banking with. The caller says, I'm doing a test, we're conducting some research. We need that two-factor authentication code that has been sent to your device in order for us to proceed with this investigation. Those are all false calls. Please, under any circumstances, do not ever give away that two-factor authentication code. Your bank, your financial institution, or any other party for that matter will have absolutely no purpose with that code. So it's like locking your doors at the end of the day, or when you leave on vacation and you secure your homes with the best security systems available. But if you give away your key or if you give away that code to disarm your security system, then it's really your home is open to the hands of the person who holds that key. So above two-factor authentication, there are many other options available, which includes things like passkeys, which we do offer on our ATB online. There's also biometric authentication, so that's facial recognition or thumbprint. And I do urge everyone to activate those features in order to best secure your accounts and your devices. And again, I do dive a little bit more into password security and general multi-factor authentication in that other webinar that I mentioned earlier. So do take a look if that's something that you're interested in learning about. Third, you want to train your employees. So you want to conduct regular interactive training sessions. You want to teach everyone from contractors to accounts payables, receivables, to account managers, all the way up to the CEO, how to identify these scams and create that culture within your organization where everybody feels comfortable asking those questions and reporting something that looks suspicious without any fear. A well-trained team is your strongest firewall and your first line of defense. So you want to build that human firewall because, like I say, this type of fraud really needs the victim's emotions and trust in order to be successful. So they don't need any extra tools. They don't need any extra technology. All they need is an email address and, again, that trust from the recipient. Next, you want to look at email filtering and encryption. So you want to look at implementing email filtering systems in order to block suspicious emails, and you want to use encryption to protect sensitive data when you're sending it over email. There are many tools and solutions available to you as a business owner, both in G Suite and in Microsoft Outlook. And I do have many resources linked to the end of this presentation for you to explore as well. So do explore the suites that your business uses, and you'll find it fairly easy to implement encryption for confidential documents that you send using your business servers. If you have the resources, you also may want to look at implementing cybersecurity tools that can help detect and prevent business email compromise attacks, such as something that we call DMARC, which stands for Domain-Based message authentication. So DMARC protocols will help you authenticate the sender's identity, and they will also alert you in the event that an email address looks like it may be spoofed. So for example, if you've received an email from bob@gmail.com in the past, but suddenly you're receiving an email from Bob with a 0 @gmail.com, the DMARC system would alert you and say, hey, this looks like a spoofed email address. Please be cautious when responding. So I've attached a cybersecurity toolkit that ATB has created for business owners into the resources, which outlines some of these tools in more detail, some of these tools that are easy to implement that are available to you. So please do take a look at that. The last step I have here is to limit the display of public information. So this is something that not a lot of people really think about, but you want to make sure that you have a policy in place within your organization where the key stakeholders, such as your CEO, accountant, or any other individuals that have the authority to access financial transactions and any business information, that they are being mindful of their digital footprint. So for example, there was a well-known celebrity CEO that had made it known to the world that they were going to China. Fraud actors jumped on that opportunity to craft an email pretending to be that CEO saying, I'm overseas in China, but I've run into some difficulties here. Can you please transfer some funds into my personal account? So just being mindful of that. And of course, the recipient to that email, thinking that it was a legitimate email, fulfilled that request. But in the resources, I've attached a link that's created by the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre that can help organizations create those social media usage policies in the workplace. And that might be a good starting point for those who have not implemented such policies yet. So all in all, the best defense against business email compromise attacks is employee education. This type of phishing will target the people of your organizations, and it will not target the tools or the technology that you have in place. So again, you need to make sure that that human firewall of your organization is nice and strong so that if your software or hardware tools fail, your people can be your strongest line of defense. Now, moving on, even with the best practices, business email compromise can still happen. Human error is a factor, it's a big factor, and fraudsters are constantly evolving with their MOs. And this is where cyber insurance now comes in. And cyber insurance is no longer a luxury, it's actually a critical last line of defense, especially here in Alberta, where many policies are now tailored for small to medium-sized businesses. So most standard business insurance policies will not cover business email compromise related losses, but a very good cyber policy will. So what should you look for in a policy? First, and most importantly, you want to look for something called misdirected payment fraud coverage. So this is specifically designed to reimburse you for funds lost due to a fraudulent wire transfer, for example. And this is the exact scenario that happens in a business email compromise attack. You also want something that's called business interruption coverage, which, exactly as it sounds, will cover the lost income and extra expenses if a business email compromise scam disrupts any of your operations. And you also want to look for data recovery and breach response coverage, which will help with the cost of restoring data, managing the aftermath of a breach. And then in addition to that, something that's worth looking into is cyber extortion coverage, which is key in case of ransomware attack. And here at ATB, we have partnered with BFL Insurance to provide our clients with cyber insurance and coverage. So if you already have a policy in place, or if you're looking to get a new one, the team at BFL will be able to answer all of your questions. So review your current coverage. They can do that with you, and they can also offer advice on what's needed to best protect your business and organization. So I'm going to add their contact details in the resource section at the end of this presentation. Again, if you already have a policy and you're just looking for them to help you review it to see if they can offer something better and a little bit more holistic, please do reach out and they will be able to help you out. So what to do if you're a victim? We've talked a lot about prevention, but what happens if the worst case scenario occurs and you realize that you've fallen victim to a business email compromise scam? Acting quickly is very critical. This is essentially a race against time because the fraud actor's first priority is to funnel those funds overseas as soon as possible. So you first want to contact your financial institution or your bank immediately. If the transfer was a wire payment, you can call your financial institution as soon as you realize that the funds have been sent to the wrong account. The faster you contact your financial institution, the higher the chance that we have of intercepting that transfer before the funds are dispersed. Because of the nature of these transactions, they can be reversed within a certain amount of time, but if that time has passed, the chances of recovering the funds are very slim. Then you want to isolate the compromised email account. So if you suspect that an email account of yours has been compromised, you want to change the password immediately. You should also log out of all active sessions and scan all of your devices for any malware or any viruses. And you want to do that by taking your devices to an in-person third-party IT company that can help you do it if you don't have anybody in-house to help you with that. You want to check for any rules or filters that the fraud actor might have created to hide those fraudulent emails or to redirect incoming messages. So sometimes even if you change your password and you change all of your credentials and you've scanned all of your devices, the fraud actor may have enabled a forward all rule so that they are continuing to receive any emails with confidential data long after you've changed your credentials. And your financial institution will always help guide you through these steps, but these are some of the immediate steps that they will ask you to take. Third, you want to file a police report, or you want to file a report with the police, as well as a report with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre is a central entity for fraud information in Canada. And reporting that incident will help them track scams and also warn other businesses and put out education material to help everybody across Canada. If you don't report it, it's almost as if it never happened. So please do these two things. And finally, contact your IT security team or a cybersecurity professional. So if you don't have anybody in-house, again, reach out to somebody that's a third party. These teams can help you investigate the full scope of the breach, identify how the fraudster got in, secure your systems to prevent future attacks. And this step might also be a requirement from your bank or your financial institution, as well as your cyber insurance policy. So just make sure that you're ahead of the game and you follow those proper protocols. So to wrap up, just remember this: business email compromise is a threat that relies solely on social engineering, and there's no technical aspects of it. It really preys on the trust and the anxiety, the fear, and in general, just the emotions of the recipient and the people of your organizations. But having just a little bit of vigilance and that trust the sender, but also verify the sender, having that mindset that's going to be your best defense. And by implementing some of those clear protocols, regularly training your team, having those right cyber insurance policies in place, having those incident management response plans, those cybersecurity policies in place, you can significantly reduce your risk and protect your businesses and organizations from financial devastation. So thank you for your time and your attention. I know this is a lot of information. I'm happy to open up the floor to any questions that you might have about business email compromise in general, best practices, cyber insurance, but I do leave you with all the resources here, including the templates that I mentioned throughout the presentation, the cybersecurity toolkit that comes in very handy and that we've had some great feedback on as well, and just a lot of other things to make sure that your cybersecurity posture is the best that it can be, and some other great tools and reading that will help you stay on top of the trends that we all face today. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aisha, for another great presentation. I think the story of the dental clinic, that real life example, really resonated with me, and I'm sure many of those viewing and watching today. So let's get into some questions with that. Let's start off. I actually have a question. What role does cyber insurance actually play in a case of BEC?
So it depends on the policy. Essentially, there are policies available, like I mentioned earlier in this presentation, that are tailored around social engineering scams. And so it really depends on the need of your organization, the nature of your organization. And again, it depends on what services you provide, how you communicate with your clients, that the insurance policies will sort of be tailored to those needs. But again, the ones that I did mention in my presentation are specific to these social engineering attacks. So there are many different pieces and pockets out there, but speaking to an insurance provider, if you have one currently, speak to them about the cyber portion of it. And if you don't, like I say, reach out to BFL or any insurance provider of your choice and speak to them about your business needs, and they will be able to tell you which specific examples or which specific policies will be covered with, these certain examples or fraud cases that I spoke about.
Wonderful. And on that note, maybe let's have a follow-up here from Sarah. Where can we find more information about cyber insurance on that note?
Sure, that's a great question. So again, if you already have a service provider, I would recommend reaching out to them. And if not, Fallon, I believe you dropped a link in the chat earlier. So that's sort of a very brief intake form to get somebody from BFL to reach out. And again, they'll just go through a series of very basic questions just to discover your needs, and then they'll guide you towards those cyber policies from there.
Awesome. I just dropped that link in the chat one more time. Sean had a question here about the name of the Canadian organizations that was cyber resources related. So just if anyone's wondering where they can find any more of that information, besides, of course, the email that we'll send out after, filled with resources.
Yeah, so the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre is a great hub for all things fraud. So they have a lot of templates, some very baseline cybersecurity templates as well for organizations that are just starting up or reviewing their cybersecurity protocols. So that's a really great place to start. And a lot of the links and the templates that I have in the resources as well are sourced from there. So overall, just a really great starting point. And again, just being able to compare what you have with the templates that they have on their website is a great way to start.
Awesome. A question here from Christine. What are the most common mistakes businesses make after realizing they have fallen victim?
That's a great question. So, if you just reset your password or you just reach out to your vendor and tell them, this was a fraudulent email or whatnot, and you think you are safe and secure, you reset your devices or you restart them, you log out of all of your accounts. Some people think that that's just enough. Others are, there's an aspect as well of embarrassment sometimes, like how could I have fallen victim to something like this? So they don't necessarily reach out to the right people in a timely fashion. So reaching out to your financial institution is one of the first things that you should do if you feel like you have fallen victim, even if you haven't confirmed it, because like I mentioned, the money goes out really fast and fraudsters are really good at funneling the funds wherever they need to go, cross-border sometimes. And so it's harder for us as financial institutions to be able to claw back those funds if we don't know about this in a timely fashion. And so again, just reaching out to the right people. So your financial institution, if you need to file a police report, reaching out to the vendors that may have been impacted, all of the employees or the individuals within the organization, just to let them know what has happened is the best way to go. So those are some of the mistakes. And again, holding back because you're not entirely sure what has happened, or there may be, again, that component of embarrassment. So, the sooner you let us know, the more chances we have of mitigating those immediate risks as well as those long-term risks for you.
A follow-up question to that, Aisha. Do you find that banks have much success when it comes to trying to recover funds sent as a result of falling victim to BEC?
So financial institutions will always try their best to recover the funds on clients' behalf. However, it depends on how soon you let us know, right? So sometimes if you let us know immediately and it's a wire that hasn't been sent out yet, we can pull that back and cancel those funds. If it has already been sent out, we can also reach out to the other financial institution or the recipient financial institution, ask them to hold any funds so that we can get them back on your behalf. But the sooner you let us know, the better, because once the funds have left our environment, it's very difficult to control them. And like I mentioned again and again, fraudsters are very fast at getting those from point A to point even D, and onwards, so that it's harder for us to pull them back.
Thank you for that answer. Another question here on AI or deepfakes. Do you find attackers are using these tools to make these attacks look more convincing? Is that something that we should be watching out for?
Yes, absolutely. So it's becoming much easier for fraudsters to create these business email compromise scams because they are using artificial intelligence. Most of them are anyway. So they can just feed in some of the legitimate emails from the victim into, the AI tool and say, write me an email in this tone using this language, saying this, this, and this. And so what the AI spits out is in the exact tone of the victim, the exact language that they're using. Sometimes if they spell a word a certain way, AI will use that as well. So absolutely, artificial intelligence is definitely making its way into these scams as well, and just making it that much easier for fraud actors to convince the recipient that they should be trusted.
Okay, that's really helpful. One more question here about emails that someone's received from ATB to sign a DocuSign. They haven't done any business previously where they have had to sign any documents through DocuSign. What would you recommend their approach be when something like this comes through to their email?
So first of all, kudos to, just being mindful of, should I be clicking on this link or signing any documents? So we appreciate that. I would recommend just reaching out to your relationship manager or the individual that you deal with at ATB to ensure that that email has been sent from them. If you need to walk into a branch and talk to, somebody there to verify that email before you click on any links, please do that. DocuSign is a tool that fraudsters know, everybody in business use day in and out. And so it's a very attractive tool that fraudsters use. So absolutely, I would just recommend to speak to somebody that you regularly speak with at ATB, or just walk into a branch and just make sure that that email is legitimate before you proceed.
A question from Gary here. Does ATB have a resource that can review your organization's online banking settings to determine if they are strong and secure as possible?
So that's a great question. Your relationship manager should be able to walk you through the options that we have and make sure that you have all the right things in place according to your business needs, as well as we have our business solutions line as well. And so I don't know if I have the number on the resources there, but I'll get that on there for you. But essentially, they should also be able to help walk through the options that we have available online compared to what you have, and just make sure that all of these things are in place. We have certain things like EFT limits, for example. So if your business doesn't do any more than $100,000 of EFTs at any given time, you can set those limits accordingly as well. So just reaching out to your relationship manager, and they should be able to either walk you through or put you in touch with a specialist that will help walk you through those options.
Okay. That's great. There was another question in the chat about transaction alert services on SMS. Is there anything that can be done, or any settings that you can add to your banking services to get those transaction alerts so you can see if something has gone through that shouldn't have gone through?
So we have a setup in which, if you have more than one user, which we always recommend everybody does, so that there's one admin and then there's the users under that admin. And so you can set up workflows. So if there's any user at any given time that processes a transaction, the admin will have to approve that in order for that to go through. So the workflows really help with those, that extra step, that extra level of security. So even if there's a user that has been compromised and the fraudster goes in and tries to conduct a transaction, that alert will go to the admin, and the admin has to approve before that goes through. So again, I would just recommend reaching out to your relationship manager, who will put you in touch with the support line or walk you through some of these options as well. But having more than one user or more than one login for your business is more than safe, or safer than having just one, because you're able to set up those workflow approvals.
Okay, great. And then there was just one final question that I saw come up in the chat about if someone has a private question or something that they didn't want to discuss here today related to the safety and security of their business, would you just recommend that they reach out to their relationship manager?
Yeah, I would recommend that, because in the background, then the relationship manager can bring it to our team, and we can help answer those questions that way.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think we cruised through all those questions. That was a rapid fire round there, Aisha. If we didn't get to a question though, or we missed something or didn't answer your question fully, we'll do our best to connect with you after and provide you with an answer. You'll also receive a follow-up email with the presentation slides and links to additional resources. So we just want to thank all of you for taking the time today to watch and be with us. And we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.